So in this class, we are going to consider answering typical questions of this nature. That is actually we are working with the red, all right? As we had in our previous class where we managed to work with the ratio, all right? Remember I was saying on a ratio, you are sharing or you are dividing a certain number into different parts depending with the given ratio. Maybe you're given 2:3, meaning to say one is going to get 2 parts, another one is going to get 3 parts out of 5 parts, which is the total of these two. If you add these two, 2 plus 3, that is what? A 5. So remember a ratio, you are sharing between a certain ratio, maybe there are 3, 1, S to 2, S to 5, whatever that you're given. Then you are sharing a certain number. Maybe we are talking of 80. It means this one is going to get 1 out of the total of these ratios. You add 5 plus 2, which is 7, plus 1, which is 8. So it's 1 out of 8 times the total, which is this one that you are sharing. Remember, we had something of that name. That was a ratio. But in this case, we are going to be referring to what we call the red. All right, this is the one you refer to when you're answering questions which are of this nature. When you're given a car travels at 80 kilometers per hour that is important on working with a rate. So a rate is a measure of how rapidly one quantity changes in comparison to another. So this one is a measure. It is a measure. Let us have this one, a measure of how rapidly, right? Of how rapidly one quantity. All right, so we're gonna refer to one quantity changes in comparison. So this is in comparison to one and to another, meaning to say it is compared another quantity. Okay, when we are referring to a quantity, let's say we are referring to speed. Another part we are talking of a distance. Another part we are talking of time. There is something that we are referring one to another. Is it the distance and time, the speed and time? Something of that nature. One is referred to another. Let us just say we talk of an easier part that can happen. You are driving, okay? When you are driving a car, you cover a certain distance, isn't it? You are moving from one point to another. You are moving from point A to point B. There is the distance to be covered from point A to point B as you are moving. But you do not just move. You do not just move from point A to point B. You are going to consider the time also. You are going to also consider the speed. So it is going to give us a relationship between these two. To say maybe, let's talk of the speed. It is equivalent to the distance over the time taken. So that is distance over time. So if I'm to consider distance over time, depending with the units that you're given, maybe your distance is in meters, the time in seconds. Remember your units that you had from your grade 8. Distance in meters, time in seconds. This part that you're saying meters over seconds, is very, very important. It tells us that one, which is the distance, is referred per unit time. Per. This part is important, this one. Per unit time. Meters per second. Per second. Meters per second. This is per. When you see this one, okay, it represents per each, meaning to say each part, each is considered for every, that is what it means. Okay, let me express this one per unit. Okay, we are given let's say 100 meters per second. What does it mean? It means for each and every second, each per, this one, it's 1 unit that we are given, 1 second. For each second, 1 second, we are going to cover 100 meters. 1 second, we are covering 100 meters. That is what it means. Or 100 meters is being covered in every second. Every second. 100 meters is being covered in every second. That is what it means. So they can give you now a condition. What about in 200 meters? What about in 200 meters? You're now considering as you are working with a proportion to say 200 meters will be equal to how many seconds which are being covered. You can actually answer questions that way. So the red, guys, do not be scared when you see this pair. It simply means for every unit that you are given. So in actual sense, we can conclude that a rate is equivalent to a certain quantity. All right. So it's going to be a certain quantity, let's say quantity A over quantity B. That's how we refer to a rate. Quantity A to quantity B. So meaning to say, we can convert this to give whatever that we want to calculate. Let's say we want to calculate this quantity A. All right. We can just say when you are working with equations, this is same like over 1. So you see, if you cross multiply like this, it means 1 times quantity A, we get quantity A. Then the rate is going to multiply quantity B. So meaning to say, we can conclude to say, therefore, quantity A, all right, whatever you obtain from quantity A is equal to the rate times quantity B. All right, so that one is going to be rate times quantity B. It's just for the sake of revision if you want to have this one. What about if you want to calculate for the quantity B, you want to have this one? What are you going to do? You have to remove this rate here. You divide by the rate by the rate. All right. So meaning to say, we can conclude to say also quantity B. If you want to calculate quantity B, you're going to divide by the rate. So it is going to be quantity A over the rate. So that's quantity A over the rate. So here, guys, we're just referring maybe those speed, distance. These formulas, they just a basic for you to know. Do not worry, I'm going to explain so that we get an understanding. Even without this, you can understand how to answer these questions. All right. So that is about the rate. So I want us to understand with questions because these are things that you are supposed like to just have the basics. But in answering the questions, you see that it's just something that is easier to answer these questions. You are given on this question, a car travels at 80 kilometers per hour. 80 kilometers per hour. What is it that you are referring there? Referring to the speed, 80 kilometers per hour. Remember, speed is measured in kilometers per hour. When you are using kilometers, you're going to use kilometers per hour. The kilometers will be representing what? The distance at that moment. So the distance will be the one to be taken in what? In kilometers at that moment. The hour will be for the time. So the time is the one which will represent the hour. That is what it means here, distance over time. So if you do not understand this, you can use the shortcut understanding this triangle, the DST triangle. It is like this, DST, DST. If you want to calculate the distance, you cover it like this. So it means distance is the product, speed times time. All right. If you want to calculate speed, you cover it like this. So it means speed is what? Distance over time. If you want to calculate the time, you cover time like this. So it means time is equal to what? Distance over speed. That is what it means. All right. So these are basics that you had previously in your grade 8, just for the sake of revision, guys. All right. So let's quickly have our question here. They are saying a car travels at 80 kilometers per hour. How long does it take to travel 320 kilometers? So answering this question, we've got different ways. Remember, this is the rate that we are given there. 80 kilometers per hour, each and every hour. The rate is stating that it is 80 kilometers per hour, which is the speed. Guys, I said per, this one, per. It means each and every hour. 80 kilometers is corresponding to 1 hour, each hour, an hour like that. 80 kilometers. So what about 320? 320 kilometers is going to correspond to how many hours? We do not know. That's the condition of the rate. We do not know. So you can call this X, whatever that you want here. You can refer this in terms of X, where you can have it as a cross multiplication. This is like a direct proportion where, remember when you're dealing with the distance, the more distance, the more time. So it's like direct proportion. It is corresponding. The distance, when it is increasing, the time is also increasing. On a direct on something that relates to a direct proportion like that, to say one is increasing, another one is increasing, you can cross multiply to find the unknown like this. So it is going to be 80 times x, which is 80. X is equal to 320 times 1, which is 320. So to find x, which is the time, you can simply divide by what? By 80 by 80 like this, just like you are solving an equation. So it means x representing the time that we do not know was going to be, you divide 80, 320 divided by 8, which was going to be 4. So it means how long the time being taken there was going to be 4 hours. Using this understanding, all right, you're obtaining what? 4 hours. Answering the same question, we could have just used this idea here. Knowing this, guys, it's an advantage. Because you're simply going to say, all right, I need to calculate what? How long, that is the time. Given the rate, which represents what? The speed. All right. So this is another way that we could have used to answer this question, which is the easier way, because you just relate to say you are given the speed, which is your rate. To travel this in kilometers, the units for kilometers is what? The distance. You are given the distance, 320 kilometers. You have the speed, the distance, how long it is the time, what is going to be the value of t, which is the time. So we saw that from this diagram, you cover t, time is what? Distance over the speed. Just like that. So our time was going to be distance over speed, which is the distance 320. So you're going to have 320 over the speed in kilometers per hour. That is 80. So 320 divided by 80 was going to give us 4, which is the time measured in what? In hours. So that is our time. How long? Just like that. So you can use this understanding, or you can use the understanding of per each value, per each, that is for every hour. You have covered 80 kilometers. What about for 320? You just divide 320 divided by what? By 8. Just like that. A certain quantity referred to another. All right. What about number 2? How far will the car travel in 10 hours? How far will the car travel in 10 hours? So you can even relate back here. That is where we are from. Remember, we're saying 80 kilometers per hour. Every hour, you cover 80 kilometers, guys. Every hour that you have, each and every hour, you have covered 80 kilometers. What about in 10 hours? So it's like this. 1 hour, you cover 80 kilometers. What about 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours? So this one is just multiply. 80 times what? Times 10, which is 800 meters, kilometers, sorry. Remember, we're talking of the kilometers. That is the condition there. Every hour, you cover 80 kilometers. What about in 10 hours? That's 80 times 10. Just like that. Or you use this idea here. Another way is to use this part. Remember, this represents what? The speed. So we have our speed. What are we given? In 10 hours, we are given the time, 10 hours. How far? That is the distance. So we saw that if you cover this distance here, you're going to remain with what? Speed times time. So distance is equal to the speed times time, which is the distance is going to be the speed, 80 kilometers per hour, times the time, which is 10. So that was going to give us 800 kilometers. As you can see, we are going to have the same answer. So knowing also these units is important, and these formulas. So that's another way. So you see, guys, there are different ways of answering these questions. It's just for you to choose, or you can consider this part. The rate is equal to quantity A over quantity B. So to find quantity A, we are going to use this. To find quantity B, we are going to use this formula. If you want this idea, this one, all right? So if you want to use this, that's another way of answering these two questions that we are seeing here. Or by just looking into the question, you can understand it, guys, all right? So I'm gonna use that part that I explained before. So guys, you choose, it's up to you. Knowing this, or you can use this concept. Remember, we said we are going to start on 1 and 2 again. Remember, we said to calculate the rate, it is from quantity A over quantity B. So in this case, the rate that we are given, which is 80 kilometers per hour, like this one, we are saying it is 80 kilometers, 80 kilometers per hour, like this. Per hour means over each and every hour, like 1 hour, like that is what it means. 80 kilometers per, it means over 1 hour like that. So the quantity that we have, A and B, A being the distance, B being what? The time. That is B is the time, A is the distance. So you have to note to say, what are you given? Like in terms of the expression of this part. What are you given in terms of this part? 80 kilometers is what? The distance. This 1 hour, the hour is for the time. That is what you just need to understand. So your rate, the one that you are given, is expressing distance to what? To time. All right, this is what it means. So the question that we are being given, using this idea of rate, whatever that you're given there. On number 1, they're saying, how long does it take to travel 320? So you ask yourself, what is this 320 kilometers? It is what? The distance. All right? And distance represents what? Quantity A. Distance, according to this formula, we said A over B. It represents quantity A. How do you calculate quantity A? By the subject of formula. Quantity A is equal to rate times quantity B after the subject of the formula. If you are to consider to say you are given a certain rate there, you can make the subject. So if you are to calculate, if you are to calculate the time, this one, B, you have to go back to B. Quantity B is equal to what? Quantity A over what? Over the rate. Depending with what you are with what you are supposed to calculate. So on our question, what are we supposed to calculate? We are given the distance representing quantity A. That is what we are given. What are we supposed to calculate? How long? It is the time which represents the quantity B. All right. Remember, the time there is for quantity B. So how do you calculate quantity B? Quantity B is equal to quantity A over the rate, meaning to say, using this idea or making B the subject, it means the quantity B is going to be rate over what? Over quantity A. That is what it means there. Where B is representing what? B is representing the time. So you're no longer writing like B is equal to, you're writing the time now. Time is equal to what? The rate that you're given over A. So the A over the rate. So this one is going to be A over it. If you cross multiply, it's going to be A over the rate. A over the rate. Here, sorry guys, here. Quantity A over what? Over the rate. This is what it means. We still have the same thing just like what we had before. So what is the quantity A? Quantity A is the distance that you are given. That is our 320 that we are given over the rate. The rate is the one that you are given original, which is 8. So are you seeing that we are still back to the same answer that we obtained for, which is 4 hours? So when they are giving you these formulas, guys, from your textbooks, they're writing this quantity and this, they just want you to have a basic understanding of what it means, but answer these questions, guys, in a way that you understand. You can use the part of the distance, speed, time formula. Between those two, you can use this part. I don't know which one are you comfortable with when answering these typical questions. The choice is in your hands. All will give you the same answers. All right, let's see another part. On number 3, it is to convert this rate, the one that we are given here, 80 kilometers per hour, to a rate measured in meters per second. How can we convert 80 kilometers per hour to meters per second? 80 kilometers per hour. Like I was saying, guys, per means for every 1 hour, for every 1 hour. So it is just like this, 80 kilometers over like this per simply means over 1 hour. Each and every 1 hour, we are going to cover 80 kilometers. So if this is the case, what about in meters? This 80 kilometers, this one, because we need it to be meters per, meaning to say meters over seconds. That is, we have to change to meters. We have to change to seconds. Remember your conversions in each and every hour. All right, let's start with kilometers. Remember those conversions from your grade 8. 1 kilometer is equivalent to 1,000 meters. Kilo means 1,000. 1 meter is equal to 100 centimeters. And all those conversions, guys, here we are referring to what? Kilometers to meters. In terms of time, remember, 1 minute is equal to 60 seconds. 1 hour, in terms of minutes, is equal to 60 minutes. But in terms of seconds, we have to multiply 60 times 60, which is 3,600 seconds in each and every hour. In each and every hour that we've got 3,600 seconds. So you see these conversions, you just have to relate here. So 80 kilometers converted to meters, we have to multiply by what? 1,000, because 1 kilometer, it's 1,000 meters. What about 80? It is going to be 80 times 1,000. We are converting to what? To meters. Because we need meters per second. The same thing, you move on to this one, 1 hour to seconds. Remember, 1 hour in seconds, 3,600 seconds. So this is what we have. Meters per second, meters over second. That is what it means. Kilometers per hour simply means kilometers over hour. That is what it means. So we can reduce this one so that it is taken per each second. We just have to divide this. All right. So that was going to be 80 times 1,000, which is 80,000 over 3,600, meaning to say you can simply use your calculator to divide these two. All right. That was going to give us a decimal 22,222 like that. Okay, let us just say to 2 decimal places in meters per second, or you can have it as a fraction, the way that you were obtaining it from your calculator. Maybe it was 200 over 9. Write it in meters per second. Just use your calculator properly. That is the idea of the rate can be converted from one to another, from one quantity to another. We are referring the units, kilometers per hour, can be related to meters per second. So I need you to go through typical questions so that you understand this part. On another question here, we are given, if you can constantly run 80 meters in 16 seconds, one quantity to another, time in seconds, distance in meters. So here you are given that like for each and every 16 seconds, you are going to cover 8 meters. We are not given this one per second, but you can change that one to per second. It's just like this, guys. You are covering 80 meters in 16 seconds, meaning to say per 16 seconds, in every 16 seconds. What about in 1 second if we divide so that we obtain 1? That is, we are going to divide 80 divided by 16, which is what? 5 meters per second. That is what it means here. 80 is equivalent. You can have it like this. 80 is equal to 16. 80 meters, 16 seconds. What about 1 second? It's how many meters? Can you see? You can have that cross multiplication. 16 times x, 16x is equal to 80. Divide by 16, divide by 16. So x is going to be what? 5. You still have the same answer, that one. So you see, the ratio part, the proportion, they can even go hand in hand in calculations. So this is what it means here. This part that we are given here, this statement that we are seeing here. All right, sorry for that. The statement here that we are given here, this statement, it means the same thing like this one, 5 meters per second. So the question on number 1 was, how long? Meaning to say, they're referring to the time taken. Will it take you to run 400 meters? How long is it going to take you to run 400 meters? So knowing that your rate is 5 meters per second, you need the time. Each for every second, you cover 5 meters. So what about 400 meters? How many seconds? You're simply going to divide. 400 divided by what? By 5. You simply have to divide. Meaning to say, we are going to have what? 80 seconds. The time taken. Understanding this concept of the rate. Or you can use that part of the distance part that I was referring to before to say, this 5 meters per second, it represents what? The speed. Here, what are we given in measured in meters? It is the distance. What are you supposed to calculate the time? So we saw that from our DST, time is distance over what? Distance over speed. How long? You need to calculate the time. So you're going to say time is distance over the speed, where the speed is the rate that you are given. The distance is the one that is to be covered, 400 meters over what? The speed, which is 5. So as you can see, that was still going to give us the same thing. So that is it. 400 divided by 5, which was going to be 80. This is time measured in seconds. That's another way of answering. So many ways. All right. Then number 2, you are given, that was to, number 2, how far can you run in 1 minute and 4 seconds? How far? The distance now. So if you are covering, for every second, you cover 5 meters. Every second, you cover 5 meters. Every second, 5 meters. What about in 1 minute, 4 seconds? Distance. You're simply going to multiply the rate that you are given to the time that you are given, this one. You're simply going to multiply these two. Or you can simply use the formula. You want to calculate the distance. So it is speed times what? Speed times time. So that is the concept. How far? That is the distance. You're simply going to multiply the speed times the time, which is the rate that you are given, times the time. Per second, this time must be in seconds. Our time we are given 1 minute and 4 seconds. So it must be in seconds because this is meters per each second. So this must be in seconds. Remember, 1 minute is equal to what? 1 minute is equal to 60 seconds. So we are going to simply add here 60 plus 4, which is 64. So you're going to have 64 seconds. This is our total time. All right. Change this to seconds. So we have the time. So we are going to simply multiply the rate, which is the speed. That is 5 times the time in seconds. That is 64. Remember, we are given 1 minute and 4 seconds. So we have to add, all right, 60 plus 4. So that's 64. Okay, so multiplying these two on your calculator, you are going to obtain 320. In meters, as we can see here, the distance meters per second. So it means the distance is being measured in what? In meters. So it's going to be 320 meters. That's how questions can be answered. So we are going to see, guys, answering questions, working with exam questions so that we can see how do they ask these typical questions. But like I said, there are so many ways of answering these questions. We'll see, guys, as we are answering, as we are moving on with our syllabus.